Welcome, excuse me, to this week's live Q&A. I hope you're all doing well today. If you don't know me, I'm Vanya Fatidis from Peaceful Eating, where I help women all over the world let go of the food rules, come to a place of peace and ease in their own bodies so that they can get on with their lives and do what really matters to them. So each week I answer as many questions as I can in half an hour. And I'm going to get started in a minute. Oops, my notes look like they want to fall off. I've got notes here because I can't remember everything. So, just a disclaimer that for almost everyone who sends me questions, all I know is what I see on the message, however I receive it, and I don't know anything about the person's history. I haven't been able to ask them supplementary questions. So what I read out to you as their question is really all that I know typically. And so please just keep that in mind. This is not to be taken as any kind of specific advice for you, but it's really, I'm taking it at face value. So just keep that in mind. I need to have a sip of water. Okay, so let's get started with today's questions. All right, so the first one is this. I'm having a hard time with acid reflux and gastro symptoms, and the way out that is being sold to me is a specialized diet. I know diets don't work. I know it could cause me to gain more weight. I'm halfway through intuitive eating, and there is nothing written about this situation. All right, so well, the first thing I want you to know is that I'm not actually a dietitian. I'm not an expert in acid reflux or gastric problems. And so, um, you know, just take what I'm saying with that in mind. And I will give you some suggestions about ways that you could find somebody to help you with this. If my suggestions aren't helpful, so please do that. So the first thing that I would say is that often in a culture of dieting, and in a kind of healthist culture that we live in, we tend to put the blame on food for pretty much everything. And I can understand if you've got acid reflux or gastric problems in particular, it makes sense that you would be thinking, or that other people would be thinking about food specifically that could be causing the issue. But I just wanted to give you some other thoughts around that. And the first one is that if you've had an eating disorder or you have an eating disorder, this can contribute to digestive problems, particularly bulimia and restrictive eating disorders. And actually, even if you don't have a diagnosed eating disorder, but you've had very restrictive dieting practices, this can also affect your gastric functioning. And if this is the case for you, then I definitely would seek out a health at every size, eating disordered, not eating disordered, but eating disorder specialist dietitian. And at the end of this, I will give you some places you can go and look for that information if that's helpful. The other thing that I wanted to say is that it could be that you are waiting too long for to eat. So again, if you've had a history of dieting or an eating disorder, it's very possible that your sensitivity to your hunger signals is not is well that it's insensitive that you're insensitive to hunger signals, and so you could be waiting far too long to eat, and this can also cause gastric problems. So, if you suspect that this is the case for you, I would suggest that you try some structured eating. So, you go, you have 3 meals and 2 or 3 snacks. So, breakfast, say 7:30, maybe a snack at around 10, and then lunch between 12:30 and 1, somewhere around there, and then maybe you have another snack at around 4, and then maybe you have dinner at 6:30, 7:30, somewhere around there. And then if you want to have a snack later on in the evening, then you do that as well. But just a kind of a nice, regular, rhythmic way of eating can help to settle gastric issues and many other things too. By the way, I often recommend that to my clients when when they've lost touch with their signals and they really don't know when they're hungry. This is a very helpful stepping stone to being able to listen to your body's signals better. The other thing is that I found certainly with myself and with some of my clients is that when we've relaxed around food and we're not so stressed around our weight and our what, when, and how much we're eating, and all of that side of things, that all of these other gastric or situations can also settle down. So that's just also something to keep in mind. And the last thing that I was thinking about that isn't related to the food specifically is that if you have anxiety and you're eating in a stress response, that can also be impacting your digestive system. So one thing you could try is to take 3 deep, full breaths right down into your belly, because you'll switch on your parasympathetic nervous system by doing this. And the nickname for the parasympathetic nervous system is rest and digest. And the sympathetic nervous system is fight or flight. So if you're in a fight or flight kind of um, mode when you're eating, you're more likely to have digestive problems. So taking a few full deep breaths before you eat can really just prepare your body, help you relax a little, and hopefully you'll have less problems. So look, maybe it is about the food, right? So it could be that actual foods are um, causing this issue for you. And I'm certainly not somebody who would be able to diagnose that or help you with that. But there are health at every size, intuitive eating dietitians and or nutritionists who might be able to help you with that, who have particular set of skills to really help you navigate safely a way to eliminate potential trigger foods that are causing this problem for you without re-triggering the diet mentality. So if you have thought through all the possible non-food reasons that I've talked about, and none of those feel like they apply to you, and it really does seem like it's a food issue, and you have the means, I would really consider consulting somebody to help you with that. And the way you can do that is go to the intuitiveeating.org website and look for counselors, certified counselors, I think it is. And then you can also go on the size, diversity, and health, all one word, and the word and is spelt out AND, size, diversity, and health.org. And they've got a tab called Find an Expert, and you can look at it based on country, and I think if in the US by state as well, and you can look at different people's expertise and what they might be able to help you with, and by all means send them an email and ask them. There might be people who are doing sliding scales, and I know many people do that. So do check those out if you think that that would be helpful for you. Okay, so take that off my notes so that I can go to the next question. It's very precarious here. You should see. One day I'll take a photo of my what this looks like. Um, so the next question is this. So many times I've seen ideas to the effect of, as long as you're healthy, being fat is slightly more acceptable. Or, I don't care what people think of my fat body because I know that I'm healthy. So this person's saying, well, I'm not healthy and I know that I'm not. So she had 2 questions. How do I manage to accept myself in my fat body, my fat and unhealthy body? And how do I stop hating myself for the pain in my body that is a consequence of my weight? Whew, that is a really huge question or topic area, and I really gave this quite a lot of thought. And bear with me here because I'm going to do a fair bit of unpacking. The first thing I want to say is I'm sorry you're struggling. Really, I'm sorry that you're suffering. And I'm sorry that this culture is unfriendly and it doesn't make life easy for people in bigger bodies. So, here are a few things to consider. The first thing I was thinking about when it comes to this is what is health? How do we know we are healthy or not healthy? Okay, we go to the doctor, we have certain tests. Maybe we have heart disease. Does that mean we are unhealthy? Or could we look at it as, well, my heart might not be healthy, but my lungs are healthy and my stomach is healthy and my pancreas is healthy and my blood sugars are doing just fine, and there's all sorts of other things that are going just fine with your health, right? So I'm not trying to belittle your question or question your belief, well, your assertion that you are not healthy. But what I do want to draw attention to is that health is a very difficult to define phenomenon, right? What actually is health? Does it mean just the absence of disease? Sometimes there is disease going on and we don't know it. We think we're healthy, but actually there's stuff going on that you know, that we're not. That means that we're not healthy. So I think we need to define what we mean for ourselves by health, and yeah, and just what does that mean for us, and also to take into account that health is also can include your mental health, your emotional health, your spiritual health. And then there's your physical health. And I know I'm naming these as separate things, but they're not actually that separate because we are whole beings and everything's interacting with everything else. So um, it's just such a complex and nuanced topic, health. And I just wanted to throw that out to you as something to consider. I was also curious about how you know that you're healthy. You said that you know you're, sorry, unhealthy. You said you know you're unhealthy. And so I was just curious about how have you come to know that and what does that mean for you? The second thing that I think we need to consider is how much of our health outcome is within our control. So what our culture tells us is that it's all within our control pretty much, it's very quick to point the blame at us for our health, and that's really not fair. For a start, our genes play a huge role in our health outcome. You can eat the healthiest diet, do all the health behaviors, not smoke, you can exercise, drink very moderately or not at all, and still get sick and die young. I know people like that. So, how much of our health really is in our control? There are things called the social determinants of health. So these are things that are not within our control, but they are more about the circumstance we find ourselves in based on all sorts of things. So things like your age, your gender identification, your sexual orientation, your race, um, your level of ability, and then the circumstances you find yourself in, where you live, what sort of a job you have, whether you have access to clean air and green spaces. And all of these things impact our health a lot, the social determinants of health. So, in fact, there was a study called the Whitehall study. Can't can't remember when it was now, which looked at in the United Kingdom, it looked at Whitehall, which is really the houses of government, the government structure and people in it, and just that whole thing. Civil servants. They looked at civil servants and they looked at them. They controlled for their health behaviors, like what sort of food they ate, whether they smoked or not, and their drinking behavior and all of that. They controlled for that, and exercise. And so it sort of boiled down to the sort of jobs that they had and their class, you could say. And what they found was that had a 25% was responsible for 25% of people's health outcomes. So that's pretty big. It's a pretty big percentage. I think our genes are 60 to 70% responsible for our health outcomes. And then there's food and exercise. Now, the diet industry and the kind of, health industry, if you can call it that, will tell us that it's all about what you're eating, how much you're exercising, and that's basically, you know, what you should be doing to control your health. And if you don't, then it's your fault. Well, Christy Harrison, I don't know if you've come across her before. She has an awesome podcast called Food Psych, which I would definitely listen to. And she, in various places, I can't remember if it was in her book, but she says that, and she has the research to back it up, but I don't have it in my mind right now. But what I do have in my mind is that diet and exercise are responsible for around 10% of our health outcome. So that's pretty small. So that's, I hope that that kind of starts to put into perspective this whole thing about whether, just about, what is health and how much control do we have over health, and just to sort of open that up a little bit. But really, what you're asking me is about the moral imperative to be healthy, whether that confers, worthiness on a person. And I don't know about you, but I certainly believe that all bodies and every body is deserving of respect and care no matter what. And that pursuing health, the little bit that is within our control, is doesn't make you a good or a bad person. Now, there might be some people that do subscribe to that belief, but it is a belief and you don't have to subscribe to it. So, whether or not you feel worthy about your own body, in your own body, is really up to you and not up to others to decide that for you. So your questions are, let me just read them again. How do I manage to accept myself in my fat and unhealthy body? Well, the first thing I want to say to you about that is that not accepting yourself elevates cortisol, which is a stress hormone, and chronic stress increases the allostatic load on the body. And the allostatic load on the body means it's your the effect of chronic stress on your body's systems. And now that is going to be impacting your health outcome. So if you do care about your health, and I think you probably do, but I'm not even sure about that, then coming to a place of acceptance is going to help your health, actually. The other thing I was thinking of is, you know, if you as a person believe that all bodies are essentially good and worthy bodies, why would it be any different for you? Why should your body not be worthy and good? The last thing I wanted to offer you on this part of your question was I think part of coming to a place of acceptance is really trying to understand the structures that are in our culture that have led you to believe that your body is not a worthy body, that it's not acceptable, um, because all of that needs to be unpacked. Because I think when you do unpack that, it becomes so much more kind of a next step. That actually, why would I not just accept my body? Look, this is the body I'm living in now. You know, your body is going to change over time, one way or another, because they do. Um, how much easier would life be if you could be on your own side? Because non acceptance is adversarial, right? It's like pushing away the body that you have, but you are in your body. So, emotionally and mentally pushing yourself away from your own body is hugely stressful and distressing, I would suggest, for our spirits and for our whole health. So I hope that that makes sense. Okay, I'm going to get on to the next part of your question, hopefully without pulling everything off my computer and knocking it all over. The next part of your question was, how do I stop hating myself for the pain in my body that is a consequence of my weight? Okay, so hate is going to be increasing the stress hormones, the cortisol in your own body, which is going to be probably increasing pain because chronic stress elevates inflammation in the body, and inflammation can exacerbate pain. So, if you want to reduce your pain, then you one thing that it might help is relaxing and softening towards yourself, giving yourself some compassion. Now, two things. The one is, are you sure that it is your size that is causing the pain? It might be. I don't know you. It might be the size that is causing the pain. It also might not be the size that is causing the pain. Lots of people believe that it's their size that is causing all sorts of things. But that is the kind of perceived wisdom in the culture. And I don't know what the pain is that you're experiencing. But people in smaller bodies also experience chronic pain in many ways. They have hip replacements, knee replacements, fibromyalgia, all sorts of conditions uh, that cause pain. And for them, it's not, there's no suggestion that it is their weight. So I just want to open that to you, that it is possible that it might not be your weight. But let's just assume it is your weight. So the reason that I think that you're probably hating yourself is because you believe that it's your fault, that your weight is within your control. And because you haven't controlled it, it's your fault that it's now impacting you and causing pain. But is it actually your fault? I would suggest it isn't your fault. Your genes have a huge role to play in the weight that you have, okay, that we all have. Our genes have a huge part to play in that. Our dieting behavior has a huge part to play in it. Now, did you go on a diet? Yes. I mean, I'm guessing you did because otherwise you probably wouldn't have messaged me, because this is pretty much what I do. So I'm assuming you've been on diets and you've been battling with your weight and trying to control your weight over years and years, probably, maybe even decades. Again, I don't know you. So one of the biggest predictors of weight gain is ever having dieted. So yes, you did go on a diet, but with the best knowledge and intentions that you had, right? You went on a diet under the false promise that it was going to lead to permanent weight loss. And that is just very unlikely for most people. Almost everybody regains the weight, and then a lot of people regain to a higher weight. So that is again a very normal and natural survival mechanism of our bodies because our bodies will defend against weight loss to protect us. And in fact, with repeated dieting, our bodies will just make us gain a bit more weight and a bit more weight and a bit more weight because it's still frightened. It interprets it, as there's a danger that starvation is going to kill you. So even your dieting is not your fault because you did it with the best of intentions and didn't know that it was actually a false promise that you were sold. So you can let yourself off the hook for that. If you've been, as a consequence of dieting, you've been binging, whatever, anything like those kinds of behaviors, that is also a very normal response to restrictive eating. So again, it's not your fault. It is a normal response to restriction. Also, what can change our body size is a response to trauma and again socioeconomic um, reasons. So there are lots of reasons, and I would say probably none of them are directly your fault in origin. So what I would suggest you do is externalize those negative feelings you have or the blame that you're holding towards yourself to the culture and the dieting industry that have sold you those false promises and set you off on a wild goose chase for a very long time, I would guess, chasing the fantasy of permanent weight loss. So I hope that that helps. Let's take a breath and a sip of water because that's a lot of talking. All right, I think I'm going to manage one more question. And it was this: how to wean yourself off weighing as you still do it as a way of keeping check, even though weight is pretty much stable without restricting. I still have to do it as I'm too scared to let go of something I've been doing for nearly 40 years. So, again, thank you for this question. What I would say to you is, first of all, you get to decide if you want to stop weighing yourself. You don't have to, right? You have autonomy of your own body and your own decisions, and there's no right or wrong way. I never advocate weighing, and I definitely advocate for not weighing because I see the harm that it does. But you get to make that choice for you. And you, I think, perhaps need to think about what is it costing you and are you willing to pay that price? So, what could it be costing you? Well, it can keep you, weighing yourself can keep you fearful. So, it's costing you your ease, perhaps. It's costing you your peace. It can keep you from fully trusting yourself and your own body because you're using the scale to keep check on yourself, which means you're not trusting yourself, your own choices, your body to guide your decisions about your eating and your exercise and so on. And so that's costing you trust in yourself and in your body. I would say it's keeping you locked in a belief that your worthiness is tied to your weight. And what is that costing you? Well, I would say it's really costing you your um, real embodiment of the truth that you are worthy no matter what, that you are undeniably worthy. So perhaps it's costing you your humanity on some level, because humans have bodies of all different sizes and shapes and orientations and identities and whatnot. And trying to keep yourself in a narrow margin of a certain body, I would say, is costing you both your freedom and your full humanity in some regard. So you get to decide for yourself. I would really maybe do some journaling and ask yourself, what is it costing me? And then you decide if you want to pay that price. And then in terms of how do you wean yourself? Well, you could go cold turkey. If you decide the price is too high, I'm not willing to pay the cost, you could just get rid of it. All it's telling you is your relationship with gravity at any one time, basically. That's what it's telling you. Or you could do a weaning process. And again, this is for you to decide how you're going to do that. But I've had clients who've put it under the bed, out of reach, really far under the bed, or put it in the car. Or actually, no, this person wasn't a client, she was someone in my group. She put it in her husband's car in the boot. And so he'd go off to work and then she couldn't because she was weighing herself several times a day. And then she had to work really hard to get the scale. She had to go outside and get it out the car and take it back inside and then put it back in the car. And it became just a faff that she became less and less interested in doing. One person put it in a box on a very high shelf in her shed. That was one of the people on one of my courses. Um, and what I suggest you do is just experiment with it for yourself. But when you're not weighing yourself, really try to listen in and experience yourself from the inside of your body. Scale is trying to give you an external feedback about something that's mostly irrelevant because it's just your relationship with gravity. But experience your body from the inside. Just notice what it's like. And let me know how it goes, because you might have further questions, or if anxieties and worries creep up, then pop them in a message in the group to me. For those of you watching, I have a free Facebook group called It's Not About the Weight. You're welcome to join. And you can ask me questions there. And, if you have further, as you're going through this and you have more you're realizing or you're struggling with or you're fearful of or whatever, we can take the next step. All right. I think that's all for today. I have overrun the time and I'm sorry I didn't get to all the questions. I will pick up next week. If you have a question you'd like to ask me, then go ahead and go to my website, www.peacefuleating.co.uk, and find the Q&A videos tab, and you can send me an anonymous question there, but you can also message me on social media. I'm happy to take questions that way. They're all anonymous. If you're interested in this, if this is kind of waking something up in you and you're starting to really question a whole lot of the things that I've brought up, then if you'd like to find out more, I have a free ebook on my website. It's called A Guide to Peaceful Eating. Go to my website, peacefuleating/subscribe, and you can get instant access to it. That's peacefuleating/subscribe, and you can get a guide to peaceful eating. Thank you very much for being here. Take care and see you next time.